We played this for you late in the program last night. For those of you who listen on the earlier side, we're playing it again. And I also want to tell you that Matt McCarthy wanted to address it specifically. So that's where we're going to start tonight on the Baseball Hour. 617-779-0985 is your phone number. We'll open up the phone lines right away. And let me tell you, if you are a baseball fan and you want to talk baseball, you had a very limited number of opportunities this week for obvious reasons. One, the Celtics and the Bruins are both in the playoffs. 2, the NFL draft is ongoing. 3, Red Sox popularity has plummeted, not just this season, really in recent years, and getting it back is a bit of a challenge. However, if you want to talk baseball, now's your chance, whether it's the Red Sox or anything else. 617-779-0985. And the Yoshida situation bears watching. There are multiple stories here. So I'm just going to read to you something quickly from Mass Live that was published earlier today. And then we'll go to Matt McCarthy, who has specific thoughts on the comment there by Alex Cora. But the headline in Mass Live, and again, the beauty of Mass Live is they give you a headline on everything.
It's fantastic.
Everything.
Love it.
And I should mention, by the way, also that, because I don't say this enough, that the Baseball Hour is also available on YouTube. Okay, you can go to the 98.5 The Sports Hub's YouTube channel and watch it there. I should tell people that more frequently than I have. But if you're sitting around on your phone, you're sitting around at home, you want to actually see us, you can do that as well. Matt McCarthy is here in studio as he is every Friday, and typically Tyler Milliken would be here as well. But the Mass Live story says Red Sox lineup for tonight's game against the Chicago Cubs at Fenway Park. The opposing pitcher for the Cubs is Shota Imanaga, whom we'll get to in a minute. But the basic headline here says Masataka Yoshida and Boston's hottest hitter not starting. So against Imanaga, who's left-handed, no Wilyer Abreu tonight, no Masataka Yoshida, who has played sparingly here, really in the last, call it 5 days, starting with the series finale in Pittsburgh. Prior to that, he actually had a good game against the Pirates. 3 hits in that game, I think, including a home run. His most productive game of the year. Now he's out of the lineup. So, Alex Cora in that exchange with Chris Cotillo of Mass Live. I thought Cora was really defensive. And what I don't know, and again, you know, if we could, I'll tell you what, Kevin, let's play it again just so people can hear it if they weren't listening. Chris Cotillo asked why Yoshida is not in the lineup. And just listen to the exchange. Go ahead, Kevin.
How would you describe Masa's role right now? It's not really DH, man. Like, I don't know what the big deal is. Like, O'Neill had to DH yesterday. Rafi had to DH today. He'll DH tomorrow. You know, like, I don't get it. You know, like, it just happens that T.O. came out of the IL and Rafi can't play third today. So he's not DH. You know, our outfield is O'Neill, Abreu, and Durant. So, yesterday and today, he was ready to play, but we can't play. So, how you see it?
Not just that. Like, people are wondering.
Honestly, like, that one bothers me because it's very simple. If you look at the lineup and where we act roster-wise, I cannot have two DH.
Right.
You know, I wish I had 3. You know, so sorry about that. But, you know, like that one, I don't know the angle or what we're trying to accomplish here, but for me, I'm very fair with you guys as far as like being honest and letting you guys know what's happening in the clubhouse, and that one, you know, is throwing me off guard, to be honest with you.
That's why we asked.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, go.
I think, you know, in some ways, Cora is so frustrated with the roster construction here, and this is a leftover thought, you know, from the Chaim Bloom era. I mean, he laid it out, you know, pretty clearly, Maz. Like, he explained Yoshida is a DH. I don't disagree with him one bit, but it was the frustration that stood out to me. And I think, you know, I look at a guy like Yoshida and I say, this guy's kind of a problem for the Red Sox. He's an $18 million a year player who's a DH, but he doesn't hit for any power. He's a butcher in the field, and he's a fine hitter. He's a good hitter. He's not a totally impactful hitter, but he's a good hitter. So I'm not saying he's a worthless player or anything like that, but he's not an everyday DH, yet they gave him $90 million over the course of 5 years, and as a result, they have hamstrung the manager, and they've hamstrung the team moving forward. I mean, Yoshida is a problem when it comes to roster construction. It makes it really hard for Alex Cora to do his job and get the other best 8 guys on the field because Masataka Yoshida can't play the field and he's not good enough to be an everyday DH. So I think that's where the frustration is coming from. He's saying, listen, I've got guys who need to DH because they're hurt. I can't get Yoshida in the lineup because I refuse to put him in the outfield because he's a butcher. What more do you want from me? And I kind of have a hard time blaming him for that frustration. Like, what more do you want for him? Yoshida is a problem. Doesn't mean he's the worst player on earth, but he's a problem when it comes to putting together good 9-man baseball teams. He's just a roster construction problem for this team, and it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse as he ages.
So again, I don't know how many people realize how bad things got when Chaim Bloom was here as chief baseball officer. And I say not just internally, because it's easy to sort of dump this on Bloom now when he's not even here to defend himself. But I said this really over the period of a couple of years. How many spots did they have on the field the last couple of years where guys were basically DHs? Yep. Jaron Duran can play left field now. 2 years ago, he was a butcher in center field.
He's a DH.
He was a butcher. Emmanuel Valdez is a DH.
DH.
Tristan Casas, early in his career, was a DH.
Rafi Devers is a DH.
Okay, so Devers on top of it. Yoshida. We already said Durant. You go up and down the list. Franchi Cordero is a DH. So the Red Sox on any given night would field 5 DHs. The team was really poorly constructed. This was the whole reason they went out and got, was it Eric Hosmer they picked up in a trade from the Padres?
Yes.
Because they didn't have anybody to play first base.
They didn't have a guy to play first base for 2 years.
Okay, so again, the team has been poorly constructed. What do you think is, first of all, is there any way to fix the problem with Yoshida?
I do. I think you have to get creative here because he does have to be your DH every day. And Cora's problem is that's going to take a bat out of the lineup. But when Devers is healthy, you put him back at third. You put O'Neill in the outfield. But then all of a sudden you're talking about losing Abreu in the outfield and he's your hottest hitter. I think you need to move Rob Refsnyder to first base. He hasn't played there in a long time, but I would give it a shot because that gives you your best lineup. Because the thing is, Yoshida is a fine hitter, right? They need better hitters in their lineup right now, Maz. So I would have DH, I would have Yoshida DH, an outfield of Duran, Abreu, and O'Neill, and I'd put Refsnyder at first base. I think that's your best offensive lineup, maybe even your best defensive lineup because you're keeping Yoshida away from the field depending on what you see from Refsnyder at first. But I think the point is, Cora is frustrated because that still is not a great option, right? You're putting a guy somewhere he hasn't played in a long time to see if he can do it. That's the problem that a guy like Masataka Yoshida presents. Because if he could just play left field, it would be a hell of a lot easier, but he can't.
Was signing Yoshida a mistake?
Massive mistake. Probably one of the biggest mistakes that Bloom made. Because again, this hamstrings the team moving forward. I mean, how are you going to build a better roster if Yoshida's locked in as your DH for the next 3 years? He's not good enough to do that. He's not good enough to play left field. You're going to have to pay somebody to take him off your hands eventually, or pay him to be a platoon player. So yeah, I mean, it's frankly, it's one of the worst signings that Bloom has made because it's going to affect them negatively for roster construction for years to come. He is quite the domino, Maz, when it comes to building either a good roster or a bad roster. He is a square peg in a round hole, and it's an issue, and Cora recognizes it.
So now I'll tell you what is, in some ways, is amazing. You know, OPS Plus, for those of you who don't know, okay, is a way to gauge a player's productivity against the rest of the league. So, for example, an OPS Plus of 100 means that you are league average. You're right in the middle. Mm-hmm. You're think of it as, again, 100 is sea level, okay? It's not like a report card or a school grade where 100's an A+. 100 in OPS means you're an average big leaguer at your position offensively, which, by the way, is not bad.
No.
That's good.
Right.
Most average guys who can play in the big leagues every day and put up average numbers are good players. They're not great players, but they're good players. Last year, incredibly to me, because I didn't realize this, Masataka Yoshida's OPS Plus was 109, which means he is 9% above the average player, which I found surprising because I thought he really tailed off in the second half. played in 140 games, but he finished with a 289 batting average, 15 home runs, and 72 RBI. Now, and the OPS was 783. Now, what it should tell you more than anything else is how little it takes to really be an average player in the big leagues. Alex Verdugo, for example, comes in somewhere similar. Now, it also tells you the rarity of an everyday player in the big leagues. So if you're asking me, is Masataka Yoshida an everyday ball player in the big leagues? My answer would be yes.
He's an everyday hitter in the big leagues.
Exactly. That's a good point. Okay, that's a good point. He's an everyday hitter in the big leagues. The answer is yes. It doesn't mean he's a middle-of-the-order bat. It doesn't mean necessarily that he's even a great DH, because we here are spoiled from having had David Ortiz for a long period of time, who's maybe the greatest designated hitter who's ever lived. And I say pure DH. He and Edgar Martinez, to me, are the two best DHs I've ever seen.
Don't get me started on Edgar. Edgar will be here all night.
Okay, and again, so that is sort of a different discussion, and both of those, but the Red Sox were built in such a way that they could carry those guys. And I say carry them, I mean make them centerpieces of their teams, and the bats were worth it. If I were to go back and look, I don't think David Ortiz ever made more in a year than Masataka Yoshida is making right now.
That's stunning.
Now, again, some of it is the salaries go up, but the Red Sox paid handsomely for Masataka Yoshida. So for those of you who out there who want to say, well, why can't you just trade Yoshida? The answer is that because as a DH, he's grossly overpaid. He's really worth about half of what he makes. He could probably get 10 to 12 million on the market. But he's worth more if he can play the outfield, because now you can do whatever you want at DH.
So then he's Alex Verdugo or he's Andrew Benintendi. And listen, Verdugo played Gold Glove quality right field last year, so maybe we shouldn't draw that comparison. But if you're hitting to that level and you can play the field at a respectable big league level, all of a sudden, you're worth something. You're a slightly above average major league hitter. There are always going to be spots for those guys. But when you're only a slightly above average major league hitter as a DH, on a team that has a lot of DHs, you're all of a sudden one of the biggest problems on the roster. If the Red Sox had 8 guys in the field who were outstanding and you didn't have to worry about it, and we'll just put Yoshida in there as the DH because he's a slightly above average hitter, you could get away with it. But not with everything else going on. Not with Rafael Devers here, not with Emmanuel Valdez here, not with the rest of this roster, because they don't have a lot of elite fielders. Yoshida doesn't work. He's a massive problem. Square peg, round hole.
Especially when he's making $18 million a year.
Yep.
So one, to your point, it affects your defense, because now you have to put other guys in the field because you can't put him in there. And this effectively was what happened to Cora in Cleveland earlier this week, that he decided to leave Tyler O'Neill in the outfield, wanted Abreu in the outfield, wanted Jarren Duran in the outfield. So it's either Yoshida either DHs or he can't play, is the point. Secondly, he's overpaid. The money could go somewhere else. And you need look no further than the other side of the diamond to wonder if there was a spot or a player that the Red Sox could have added during the offseason who is worth a hell of a lot more than Masataka Yoshida would be right now. 617-779-0985. Martin's in Texas. We'll get to him. Nick's in Providence. We'll get to him. Anyone else you want to call? 617-779-0985 on the Baseball Hour.
is swung on and missed. Beautiful changeup, and he strikes out Josh Bell. 1, 2, 3 for Shota Imanaga.
Swing and a miss. Imanaga gets him.
Bism will swing and miss, strike 3. Another check swing. He got fooled again. This time he's out on strikes.
Those are highlights of Shota Imanaga. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm close. Imanaga is a left-handed pitcher for the Cubs. He'll face the Red Sox tonight at Fenway Park. Cutter Crawford on the mound for Boston. You should watch Imanaga tonight if you're watching the game. And there, again, there's nothing else going on in Boston tonight in terms of the sports. So Celtics and Bruins both play tomorrow. The draft. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
I was going to say somewhere Alex Barth is in the back room screaming at you, Maz.
Right. I'm thinking of actual games. Right. So there's no games, but there is the draft.
Oh, the Patriots will have the first 2 pick. You can go right over to the Celtics after that.
I mean, it's
Red Sox, whatever team we're talking about.
The draft's a big one. I can't let that one slip my mind. But Imanaga should interest you if you're a baseball fan. The Red Sox wanted Imanaga. When they lost out on Yamamoto, Shota Imanaga was one of the guys that they wanted to pursue. And he's off to a tremendous start with the Cubs. 3-0, 0.84 ERA, 21 strikeouts, 2 walks, which is always a big one for me, the strikeout to walk. And it doesn't even have to be high strikeout. But if the ratio is good, you usually have a good pitcher. And so his is, 10.5 to 1. The number's ridiculous. So left-handed hitters are 4 for 22 against him. He hasn't walked a lefty. He has not allowed an extra base hit to a lefty. So tonight, Cora doesn't have Yoshida in the lineup, and he doesn't have Abreu in the lineup, which makes perfect sense. So this all does sort of tie together. You know what his salary is?
I want to say he got like $56 million or something like that. Something close.
13.25 per year for 4 years.
Oh, that's a bargain.
$53 million over 4 years. Yoshida's making 90 over 5, 18 million per.
That's brutal.
So not only if you would, given, first of all, the Red Sox can afford both. Okay, that's obvious. But if it's one or the other, not only could you have Imanaga instead of Yoshida, who is now bottling up the roster, as you said, and frankly, hasn't been all that productive, at least this year when he's been in there. Faded badly in the second half of last year. They tried to trade him during the offseason. So not only that, but you could then still have an additional $5 million left over. So, and $5 million might not sound like a lot, but it's a potentially another player. You're paying Rafael and Bayo, 6+ to be on the, or it might even be higher than that this year, but it's somewhere in that range for Rafaela, $6.5 million. So, you can fill another roster spot with that dough. Martin in Texas on Yoshida. Go ahead, Martin.
Hi, Tony. I just wanted to say that I think people are overrating just how bad Yoshida was in left field last season, especially at home, because the defensive metrics don't do anyone any favors. Even a fielder like Mike Trout wouldn't put up good metrics in left field at Fenway Park, and his left-right splits were also pretty even. So what they should do is, like what Matt said, is put Refsnyder at first base and let Yoshida play left field at least at home games to have a better offensive lineup, and he's passable out there. It's just been completely overrated by the front office and all the spectators.
So, Martin, I disagree with you. I think he sucks out there. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I don't feel he's a left fielder at all. But to Martin's point, I do think they need his bat in the lineup. So, particularly given, the injuries, to this lineup with, Story being out and Casas being out, they need another major league hitter. The bottom of this lineup, when we're talking about tonight, Wong, Reyes, Dahlbeck, Valdez, Rafaela. I'm sorry, say what you will about Masataka Yoshida, and I am not a big fan of his, but he's an average to slightly above average big league hitter. You need to find a way to get him in the lineup. So I wouldn't play him in left field. I'd have him be the everyday DH, and I'd try Refsnyder at first base.
Okay, so I just punched up left field last year to give you some idea, and of where Yoshida ranked in, according to Fangraphs, which does first of all, based on fielding percentage, he was one of the worst. He was 22nd out of 25.
Yeah, not good.
If you go by errors, he was tied for 10th most with 3 errors. Kyle Schwarber was worse. I don't think you want to be mentioned in the same breath as Kyle Schwarber. For defensive runs saved in the outfield, Yoshida was 21st out of 25. If you want to go by outs above average in left field, Yoshida was 21st out of 25. He was one of the worst left fielders in the game.
Yeah, I can understand the argument, hey, can you hide him at Fenway Park? Like, we can have a legitimate discussion about that. You would disagree. I would disagree with that. I don't think it's overwhelming that you couldn't hide him. I wouldn't put him out there because I do think you have other options. But it's apparent that Alex Cora feels he cannot put him in the field. He's played 1 inning in the outfield, all this year at this point. They're benching him when they obviously need big league hitters in their lineup. That's how badly they feel he is. He played in left field last year. That's how poorly they think of his ability out there. And we do have to put some stock in that. And
look, the exchange with Chris Cotillo where Cora got defensive, I can tell you from experience, anytime you ask a manager why someone is not in the lineup, he takes that as a second guess. Okay, so that's what Cora did. That's number one. And secondly, my guess is Cora probably likes Yoshida. I mean, there's nothing that is suggested to me that I've heard that Yoshida is like a bad guy or a pain in the ass or, I think Yoshida's, from what I understand, generally a good teammate. Like I haven't heard anything to the contrary. So Cora probably likes him, doesn't want to throw him under the bus, but feels like he can't put him in the outfield because their defense sucks enough as it is. Jeff in Boston on Yoshida. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. So with Yoshida, totally agree that him not really being able to play the field is a big hamstring to the roster. But I also think we're getting dangerously close to Devers being in that same boat, too. And, I mean, even over the next year or two, if he continues to regress and just straight up can't play the field either, and he has to be a full-time DH, you're looking at, $50 million and 2 roster spots to commit to the DH position. And I'm not somebody that needs to, cut costs or anything, pay as much money as you can. But at some point, that's just bad for the roster, I think.
It's horrible money management. Horrible. I don't know any other way to say it. And if you look at the Red Sox, like you want to start getting into the payroll not being high enough, as a fan, you want better investments or you want more investment in the team. I would also tell you there's been a lot of bad investment in the team. If you're going to pay a positional player $30 million a year, who are you paying in retrospect? Rafael Devers or Mookie Betts?
Mookie Betts.
Now, look, I was wrong on this. Okay, I thought that because Devers bats left-handed and I thought Devers' defense at third base would be quote-unquote passable, that it would be fine. And if Devers can play third base, then we can have the debate again. But if his defense at third is among the worst in the game, then he's a DH. In which case, he's not worth $30 million.
Right, because he's a good hitter. He's a really good hitter. He's a great hitter, but I don't know if he is a everyday $30 million a year DH. Like you're starting to talk about whether it was worth giving him that type of contract.
I mean, now look, again, I will tell you that Mookie Betts to me, I said, is not the kind of guy that's going to hit the ball out of the ballpark to the opposite field. And in the postseason, he's been something less than stellar. And honestly, I don't know if Mookie Betts wanted to stay here or not. My guess is no. So I don't put that one entirely on the Red Sox, and I never have. But if we're talking now, today, and we're looking at it and saying, Mookie Betts is a perennial MVP candidate who can play Gold Glove defense, it turns out at multiple positions.
Everywhere, infield, outfield, playing shortstop now. They could use a shortstop, couldn't they?
So you can justify $30 million to that guy easily. Mm-hmm. And you can justify many years because he's in unbelievable physical condition. If Devers can't play third, he's not worth the $30 million. He becomes a $22, $23 million player.
You know how many times, I just looked this up, I'm kind of shocked by it, because we think of Devers as, this truly elite hitter, right? You know how many times Devers has had an OPS over 900 in his career?
Can I say 0?
Once. 2019. Once.
Because he doesn't walk.
Yeah.
So
he's a really good hitter, right? I mean, at times he is a great hitter, and he is an impact hitter, so I'm not trying to take that away from him. But what I'm saying is if he can't play the field, he's not a $30 million a year player. And to your point, Maz, the Red Sox we've criticized them for not spending money, but the guys they have spent money on, Devers is the highest paid player on the team, $30 million a year. Trevor Story is second, can't get on the field. Masataka Yoshida is third, at $18 million, tied with Lucas Giolito. Like, we have spent the show tonight talking about the third highest paid player on the Red Sox not being in the lineup because the manager refuses to put him in the lineup because he can't play the field. That's a disaster. I'm sorry. That is a complete miscalculation, and it's going to hold them back for years unless they find a way out of it.
We'll continue with your calls when we come back. McCarthy will get you caught up on headlines here. When we come back, we'll update you on Tristan Casas, whose injury is not what we thought it was. In the event you haven't heard this, we'll fill you in on that, and I'll give you a little update on some of those DH salaries to put Masataka Yoshida's contract into perspective. We'll do that when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
Sports Hub headlines.
The Red Sox.
Baseball Banter. The Baseball Hour with Tony Maz on the Sports Hub.
Unfortunate event last game in that first at bat. After that 3-1 swing, just came up with a lot of pain in my midsection. We're getting the details a little more in depth as we speak, and I'm going to Boston today to get some reevaluation done and some more testing, so we'll know more about it. But for right now, just a lot of pain in my midsection. I don't know the vocabulary necessarily of where it directly is, but I just knew it was something abnormal that couldn't let me play any longer in the game.
Did it come up just on that swing, or was it before? Did you start feeling it before that?
I had felt it on a swing in the Indian series back at home, and I'm just in a groove right now. I'm seeing the ball well, and I felt like I could still put together competitive at bats with a little bit of pain on my midsection. But yesterday it just escalated to something that I couldn't continue dealing with any longer, and just had to pull the plug right there after that first at bat.
So that's Tristan Casas a little while back talking about the pain in his rib cage area. He has since gone on the injured list, will be out for some extended period of time, the length of which, or precise length of which, is a little unclear. And I want to read to you what the latest is, but he went on the disabled list. Injured list, sorry, old habits. He went on the injured list with what was called a fractured rib. Did you see this, Matt?
I did not.
Okay. They may have said broken rib but I saw that and I went, and this is me now wondering what's going on. I saw that and went, how do you break a rib swinging a bat?
Yeah, they listed it as a left rib fracture.
Okay, left rib fracture. Now, Chris Sale, if we remember, broke a rib throwing a ball. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I thought, okay, well, I suppose that's possible, but that's weird too. If that's the case, this guy's brittle. Then I saw this tweet today from Alex Spear of the Boston Globe. And the tweet reads, Tristan Casas said he didn't fracture his rib, but rather suffered torn cartilage, an unusual injury without contact. He was told by the doctor that he, quote unquote, created my own car crash. Timetable is wide, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks to start, and that was in quotes, meaning Casas told him that, to start cardio activity and strengthening. So it's just 3 to 9 weeks to start cardio. But here's what I want to know. Did the Red Sox just get the release wrong and it was never a rib fracture, or they didn't know how to word it and they called it or did Casas go see someone, found out it's not what the team said it is, and they misdiagnosed it, because that would be a bigger issue to me if they didn't diagnose it properly.
Yeah, I think it's probably more the first thing, Maz, that this is such a strange injury that, based on, it was mysterious. I was there the day in Pittsburgh that Casas left the game, and you're like, what the hell just happened? And then, of course, the reports and the comments after the game and the days after, you're like, this thing is strange. For this injury to happen in the first place is strange. Swinging a bat, the doctor is saying he created his own car crash. I would tend to lean towards they probably just didn't have the right diagnosis at first because they needed a little bit more information instead of a straight misdiagnosis. But the whole thing is strange, and I'll say it's not exactly reassuring as a Red Sox fan that he's dealing with this right now. How the hell did this happen, and how long is he going to be out, and will he be the same when he comes back? Is this thing going to linger? And when you hear cartilage and you don't really know how it got torn in the first place, that's not great.
So the other thing that I do wonder, and you hear Casas talk about it there, that he felt it in a Cleveland game and that tells me he tore it then. He continued to play and tore it further. So, my guess is that's what they mean by created your own car crash, that he exacerbated the problem.
Fair.
And now they're going to lose. I don't know if they could have nipped it in the bud or not, but it feels like they let it go, and now he's going to be out a while. And they need him. Nick in Providence. Nick, what do you got?
So the OPS plus stuff I think is so overrated because it's all adjusted. Anything that's plus is adjusted for ballpark and adjusted for this and that. Like, it's all measuring guys against guys. What happened to like the standard of like McCarthy? You pulled the 900, right, for OPS 900 because in your head you hear 900 OPS. Oh, that must be a good hitter. Like, there's certain thresholds and tiers, Maz, that guys get to just because of the numbers that they put up, not because of what they did in what park compared to this other guy. Masataka Yoshida's OPS last year was 783. I'm supposed to believe that's 9% better than average. 783? I don't even think he's that good of a ball player, to be honest. I think he was such a waste of money. And Maz, just to comment on your $5 million for a player, with the way that this team's constructed right now, $5 million almost gets them a full lineup. So let's just kind of, take it for what
Nick,
it
it's
is.
a fair point. Yeah, thank you for the call. All I'm telling you is you say that, 783 OPS is an average player. Here's what I would tell you. Yes. So again, we look at the thresholds of 800, 900. Those are good players. If you have an OPS of, I don't know what league average is. I'd be willing to bet it's like 760.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere in that range. So he's
something like that.
Slightly above average,
right?
But not by much.
No, and again, but that's offense. OPS measures offense, doesn't measure defense. Doesn't mean he's an average player. Means offensively he's above average. And again, this is my point. This is my point to Nick. It doesn't take much to be an average hitter in the big leagues. 15 homers, 70 RBI, and a 280 average is pretty good. You're above average. Incredible as it seems, you're above average. 617-779-0985. We'll wrap it up with your calls next.
This is the Baseball Hour. baseball banter. The Baseball Hour with Tony Maz on the Sports.
For the summer when Maz never works on Fridays. Baseball Roundtable, Baseball Hour. McCarthy taking over for Maz here. We've gone to the bullpen. Maz had a prior engagement tonight. An important thing. Good thing. Nothing bad. Just had to leave the show a little bit early tonight, so he's got something exciting going on, and we're excited for him. So I got to get ready. Got to get warmed up there, Majori.
In the summer, though, you will have Milliken most weeks, given all of his stats.
Correct. He will eat up all of the air, and I say that with all the love and respect in my heart for Tyler Milliken. It's great. Friday night, you just pass the buck, man. Nothing better than rolling in here on a Friday night and just tossing to Milliken. Let him do his thing.
Quickly, before you get into your final thoughts here.
Yes.
I've been tossing this idea around this week, and I want to know, it's obviously tough. There's no interest in getting to Fenway. Not no interest, but would it interest you to go to Fenway if you knew, how before the game they have a kid, give us those 2 words that we want to hear before a game?
Play ball, yeah.
Would it interest you if you were told that Tyler Milliken was the play ball kid? Would you go?
Yes.
See?
1,000%.
Let's get that going.
I think we should have Milliken go out there and do the play ball thing. I would love that. I'll show up for anything Milliken does. I find him fascinating. I would just love to, and I've never done this. I keep kind of asking him to. I keep trying to get to do, dinner with him or whatever, break bread with Tyler Milliken. The man is always busy, so maybe I should take a hint on that. I would just love to go to the nines with him and watch him eat. I would just sit there and watch. It would be fascinating.
Kill those wings and skins?
Oh, my God. It would be absolutely fascinating. So, yes, we'll make that happen at some point. So we continue here on the Baseball Hour with McCarthy now in from Maz. Leading into more draft coverage tonight, Joe Murray's on. Draft starting at 7 o'clock. Alex Barth is going to be on the air. They were great last night. So we'll have excellent draft coverage coming your way all night long here on the Sports Hub. Real quick, though, on tonight's game, which I do find interesting and compelling, and I will be popping back and forth between the Sox and the draft tonight, because I think this is a great pitching matchup. And I'm a baseball nerd. If there's one thing that can really get me to tune into a baseball game on just a random Friday night, it's a good pitching matchup. And you have that tonight. Cubs in town. Red Sox Cubs is always compelling, just the history of it. I like it. I kind of nerd out over that stuff. I enjoy it. But you get Cutter Crawford on the mound tonight against Shota Imanaga, who we've talked about, who the Red Sox were interested in. They ultimately did not sign. But I do think this kind of gets into the bigger picture thing going on with the Red Sox pitching staff right now. If I told you Kevin Majori, who leads Major League Baseball in ERA, who is it? If I told you, sorry, I know you got to put your headphones on back there. I apologize.
We got a lot of voices back here.
I know. If I told you who leads baseball in ERA, who is it?
I couldn't tell you. Well,
Cutter Crawford.
I felt like that was an easy question.
Cutter Crawford. Cutter Crawford. The Red Sox lead baseball in ERA as a team with a 2.60 or 7.0. I'd have to look at that. Looked at that before the show. So the Red Sox have gotten a lot out of some fine pitchers, right? Cutter Crawford's a fine pitcher. I mean, I certainly don't think he's the best pitcher in baseball. Statistically, for the first month of the season, you could argue if ERA is still the North Star for you, and it kind of still is for me because I'm old school, Cutter Crawford has been the best pitcher in baseball, or in that discussion, for the first month of the year. And obviously, he's not that, but he's overachieving. The same way that I would argue the Red Sox themselves are overachieving. I mean, they're 14-12, which is kind of a minor miracle given the injuries they've had and the overall, I think, lack of talent on this roster. And I think the pitching staff is overachieving. And I think that's why the team is above 500. I think it's basically the only reason they're above 500. The pitching's been really quite good. And yet they've got this rash of injuries right now. You think about it, the Red Sox tried to spend about $30 million on their starting rotation this year. But that's with Lucas Giolito at $18 million, Nick Pivetta at $7.5 million. You get Garrett Whitlock at $3.5 million, $4 million somewhere in there, and then Brian Bayo before his contract kicked in about $1 million. So, that's basically your starting rotation. That's about $30 million. It's not much of an investment at all. Certainly nowhere near close to a significant investment. Hell, the Red Sox were paying Chris Sale $31 million last year. So they've spent very little money, and despite the rash of injuries, both in the starting rotation and in the lineup, they've actually really gotten a lot, particularly out of that starting rotation. And I think Andrew Bailey deserves a lot of credit for that. However, there's the other side of the coin. And I'm not saying I completely buy into this yet. I still need to see a little bit more, but the discussion that Andrew Bailey and the take and the opinion that Andrew Bailey is getting these guys hurt by having them throw all these breaking balls is certainly picking up steam. If this is going to be a big thing to watch throughout the year, and you can understand it, right? I mean, you throw a breaking ball, that's going to put more strain on your elbow, it's going to put more strain on your arm. It's possible, I will allow for the fact that Andrew Bailey is possibly getting these Red Sox pitchers hurt. Yet at the same time, they're getting way more out of them than they ever should. So I think this is going to be a fascinating discussion really for the rest of the year, and it's something I'm going to be monitoring week by week. The performance of this Red Sox starting rotation and pitching staff as a whole versus the cost of, or the risk, the increased risk of injury. And is it worth it? But this is kind of the model. This is the model in baseball now, and I'm not saying I agree with it. You know, I'd rather go out and spend a lot more money on your starting rotation and, you know, try and get workhorses and this and that and, you know, and try and get stars and you name it. But this is kind of the model in baseball. Like, get the most out of these pitchers, kind of churn and burn. It is the Rays model. And you know what? So far, you can criticize it all you want, given the rash of injuries, and it's not an unreasonable opinion. But so far, the Red Sox have gotten more out of this pitching staff than I certainly ever allowed for entering this year. So maybe it's getting them hurt. Maybe Bailey is getting them hurt. Maybe that thing is legit. But I don't think Cutter Crawford would have the best ERA in baseball if not for this approach. If not for the way, you know, the philosophies and the teachings of the great monk himself, Andrew Bailey. I mean, that's the way a lot of people want to present him. And you know what? I kind of buy into it. Cutter Crawford has the best ERA in baseball. He's not that good. So don't tell me that the pitching coach hasn't had a really positive impact. Question is, can you keep doing it? Is it sustainable over the course of the long term? And that's where I don't think it is. That's why I think the Rays struggle every year in the playoffs. They eventually burn through too many pitchers, and then in the end, they're not good enough, right? Their pitching staff isn't good enough. But throughout the year, when they use 35 pitchers or however many pitchers they use every single year, they get the most out of the majority of them. They churn through them and they burn through them, but they get a lot out of them in the process. Is it worth it? Well, that's going to be a discussion we're going to have all year long. But so far, the results on the field, the performance from the pitchers when they've been on the mound, it's been good. Best ERA in baseball for both Cutter Crawford and the Red Sox pitch. Thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight. Of course, Tony Maz is a part of the program. Thanks to him. Thanks to Kevin Majori. Thanks to Kyle Fabrizio. Coming up next, Joe Murray. Joe Murray, full foursies tonight. And Alex Barth is alongside as well for full-blown Patriots draft coverage. They will be on the clock here in what, about 10 minutes? 10 minutes or so from now? 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Barth says he would know. I'm Matt McCarthy. Have a great night. See ya.
WBCFM 91 from the Town Fair Tire Studios, the home of the Patriots, the Celts, the Revs, and